TvGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
In the same way, always, yes, right? Always, one cannot get tired of this. You can get tired of anything less than this, right? Because this is where we live. We move in Him, and this is what gives us life, the Word. The Word of grace is like our food, right? Jesus said one day, not only of bread shall man live alone, implying that there's another bread that's needed, the Word of God. Well, let's go to our topic today, a very comforting topic. Today's topic is the family of faith. So let's say the family of faith. Let's go to see what the Apostle Paul says. I want to greet internationally, worldwide, everyone that's watching via internet. I love you very much, and I receive that you are attentive there at home with a notepad and take down these biblical verses. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to the family of faith. It says there, the family of faith. There it doesn't say to the Lopez family. It doesn't say to the Rodriguez family or the De Jesus family or so-and-so family. It's not speaking of humanity. The family of faith, it was created by God. There's no flesh. And I didn't mention last names because I'm speaking of the family of faith. In that family, there is no skin color. There are not whites, black, Chinese, or olive skin because it is the family of faith. We're speaking of the spirit that has no color. Well, God, everything that's done here on earth is like a shadow of what took place in heaven. Well, God created spirits and created them in His image and gave them a name and enrolled them in the book of life. And then thousands of thousands, millions, He chose them and sent them to earth, and He planned for them. First, He gave them the law for thousands of years, but that did not create a family. Because in the law, there's no love, and the law is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and no one can comply because the law produces rage, didn't produce family. So when Jesus came and created the creator of faith, then He called them the family of faith. You need these instructions I'm speaking about. You need them because this is God's discipline. Discipline isn't that He's going to punish you. It is to teach you and let you know what your true identity is. How does a father discipline his child? He sets up goals for him. I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help you with that. And his son begins to see the goals. That is the discipline. Discipline isn't to hurt him, spank him, and holler. A father who knows how to discipline doesn't yell at his children, but God deals with His children. Says we've all taken part in discipline. God deals with the elderly, those that have white hair, blonde hair, black hair, with all men. He deals with them, but He doesn't abandon His children. Every one that He brought to the womb and through the womb, they will never be abandoned. God will deal with them. How is a person that his name was written in the book of life that God brings him is going to be lost? They believe the saved will be lost. How is that going to be if God sends him here to earth and now the devil destroys him? That's an irresponsible father. If God is like that, then I don't know God. The God I know is responsible that if He sends His son somewhere, there He guarantees, though he misbehave, He disciplines him, corrects him, but how is he going to lose them? He says, my sheep, I call them, I know them, and I have them in my hand, and no one can snatch them away. How is someone going to snatch them away? Say the family of faith. Brother, this isn't just any doctrine. Here's where you come to receive treatment. You don't need any psychiatrist nor a psychologist. With this information that we serve here, suddenly your spirit begins to feel fulfilled. Oh, I used to think I was a piece of flesh from Puerto Rico and Honduras. No, I'm not a piece of flesh. I am a spirit that God has sent, and my name is written in the book of life. Ask God to reveal that name. Perhaps you may dream with it, and maybe you won't understand it because there is an angelical language. Notice that every spirit has a language. Paul said, if I speak in angelic tongues or in human tongues, your spirit. Unless you are a spirit that's deaf mute. I don't know if God has created spirits that are deaf mute, but you have a language and you rejoice. Yes. Father. Well, let's go to the book of Hebrews. To another chapter. That book is full of great revelation to see what it says about the family of faith. Let's read verse 11, Hebrews 11:11. It says, verse 11, by faith, even Sarah herself, when she was unable to have children, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past the age, since she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the star in the sky and countless as the sand of the seashore. These dead died in faith. All of them did not receive their promise. They believed, confessing and receiving that they were foreigners and pilgrims in the earth. You're not of this earth. That's why in Philippians 3:20 says, brethren, our citizenship is where? In the heavens. Paul says it, Philippians 3:20, for those that are taking notes in the internet. Our citizenship here on earth, people say, oh, we are citizens from heaven, but they walk as if they were of the earth. My citizenship is in Colombia. My citizenship is in Puerto Rico. That's your flesh. That's your flesh. But the family of faith comes from one single place. It's a single passport that doesn't expire. And you shall return there. If you die or die in an accident, you leave with the Lord whenever, but you will return from whence you come out. So when you leave this body, immediately you'll find an angel there that tells you, welcome to your true citizenship. That's why Paul, speaking of that citizenship, he says, for me to die is to gain. There are people that are so attached to this life that a nail hurts and they go to the doctor. I knew a man in Massachusetts that was called because he left. His name was Tim Sullivan. He was a multi-millionaire salesman for the company. He was number one. I was number 3 in the company. I was pretty good also. I used to sell life insurance. But this Tim, he was very disciplined. He would wake up at 5 in the morning, run 3 miles. One day we went to a conference and we stood in a hotel out there somewhere and we got up around 6 and Tim was nowhere to be found. And when we looked out the window, he was jogging in the winter. He was very disciplined. And Dick Testa, an Italian gentleman that worked with us, told me, Jose, you know Tim Sullivan, a little pain on a nail, right away he's calling his doctor. What's going on with my finger? Any little movement. Well, one day he never woke up, died, as healthy as he was, because his goals were placed on the flesh, and everyone that has their sight on the flesh. Listen, you are a foreigner, a pilgrim. You are a citizen from heaven, and you should be thinking in that manner. You are of the family of faith. Look at what it says, verse 14. And obviously, people who say such thing are looking forward to a country. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better one. Say a better one, a better country, a heavenly one. Say heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. Hello, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. He has prepared a city. Hello, Abba, Father. Listen and look who is the architect. Let's look at verse 10. Let's return there. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Architect and builder, it is a spiritual city. That's why we're speaking of that city now, because we are constructing it. We're constructing it here in your head, in your mind, which is synonymous of your spirit. And this is what gives life. This, when you place this information through your head like this, that it enters, then your life begins. You say, wow, what's going on with me? I feel better. That pain left. Yes, because don't you see you've been receiving false information for years, and that causes harm. There are many people that enter this ministry, and with no one touching them, they be rejuvenated. They get up with strength because of the information they receive. Don't you see that faith cometh by the hearing? Faith isn't by the reading, by the hearing. So it is to say that the faith comes when God sends the architect to speak, and suddenly you hear it and you receive the faith. Praise God. How wonderful. How we're doing with time, because we're still left with other things I want to share. Hebrews 13. We have traveled through all of these chapters. Hebrews 13. Let's read from verse 7. Remember, listen, I am a pastor of pastors. That's why I've always had dreams with churches that have no walls. And every time I dreamt with the church, I see a multitude of people with no walls, because I am the pastor of the church, not a part of a church. This is a part of the church that exists all around the world. Remember our leaders that spoke to us of the word of God. Consider what's been the outcome of their life, of their conduct, and imitate their faith. It says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, verse 8, the same yesterday and today and forever. Notice here is speaking yesterday, before the foundation of the world, and today, that today is today, because he does not have calendars nor clocks. It is to say he's always the same that he was yesterday, and today was written 2,000 years ago, but when you read it 2,000 years ago, it was today, and you read it yesterday and it's today is today, and tomorrow is today, because he lives in an eternal today. That was the city they were looking for. Don't you see that living here is a problem? Here you have to be watching the calendar, the clock, and everyone else. But in that city that they're fabricating, there are no calendars, no longer any clocks. Everything is done away with. It's an eternal joy. It is something that Paul said, it is an indescribable love, something everybody has dreamt about. And we are making history with that news. Imagine. That's why we make people happy, because we place them, we discipline them, we teach them to consider, to sow for this gospel, to suffer for the gospel. We teach them, listen, it is worth it that you haven't thrown your youth out in that manner. It's worth you having denied yourself, because you are sowing into a kingdom. Our work in the Lord is not in vain, Paul says. So look at the next verse. It says, do not be carried away by all kinds of strange doctrines. Oof, that'll take you away from the family of faith. because it says it is good for our hearts to be strengthened by grace, not with the law, not with eating food ceremonies. No, everybody always attentive to don't eat on Friday, Ash Wednesday, don't eat pork, but they eat ham that comes from the pork. That you don't do this on Friday and Saturday. You got to keep that today is Ash Sunday, Ash Wednesday. This is the day of the death. And they're always keeping nonsense. Those are diverse doctrines. Affirm your heart with grace, because grace is the food of your spirit. What you hear that's going to edify your life. You have to leave all those religious rudiments that take you and keep you away from the family of faith. It says, because it is good to strengthen the heart with grace, not with foods that has not benefit those who did it. All those men of the old covenant, Moses and all those prophets, as much as they practice these things, it's never benefited them for anything. All of those things, walking on your knees, fasting, repetitive prayers, that has never benefit those that practice that. We have an altar which those who serve at the tabernacle have no right for the bodies of those animals whose blood was brought into the holy place by the high priest, and a sacrifice for sins are burnt outside the camp. That's where the spiritualists are always burning incense and killing chickens and pouring blood in the front of the doors of their enemies to do witchery. That's nonsense. What that does is dirty the front of your house and bring smell and stink. Be quiet, Jose Luis. Verse 12 says, therefore, Jesus also suffered outside the gate so that he might sanctify the people by his blood. Therefore, let us go forward to him outside the camp bearing his suffering. For here we do not have a permanent city. He mentions the city again. For we are looking for the city that is to come. Say that is to come. Therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of what? Praise. It doesn't say of worship. It says sacrifice of praise to God continuously. That is to say, fruit of lips that confess his name. And do not forget to do good and to share with those in need, because God takes pleasure in those types of sacrifices. Obey your pastors, your leaders, and submit to them, because they are keeping watch over your pockets. Your pockets? No, your souls. They watch over what? Your souls. They watch over your bank account, your financial statement, how much you have, how much you give. Those are not pastors. Those are criminals of pulpits that are always tentative to how many sheep they have. If I have 100, so much comes in. If I have 1,000, so much money comes in. No, it is to watch over the souls. When Paul uses the term souls, he doesn't like that, because souls pertains to humanity, but is speaking of a treasure that's in this body that have asthmatic experiences, because the soul is a composite of spirit and body. It isn't that of three. Forget about that. There are two, a spirit in a vessel of clay, a treasure in a vessel of clay. But when the treasure enters the clay, then they become a living soul that now Paul calls life-giving spirit, because we have gone from death to life. But when it says here that they watch over our soul, is that they are concerned for your well-being. I've lost people here. Many people, because I watch over them. How do I watch over them? By telling them the truth. Oh, and they give big tithe. I've had people here that have tithe heavy. There were times where on Wednesday, $2,000 would come in and one would give $3,000. One would give more than the whole congregation. But because they gave a lot, I can't commit the truth of God for wealth. Imagine, since I give a lot of money, when are you going to visit me? But if I didn't visit the one that gave $5, why should I visit the one that gave $3,000? Because what I am showing there, no, I don't visit this one, but this one gives $3,000. I must do it because he will continue to give. So now I am watching for his pocket, not his soul. You have to make sure you don't make exceptions of person. A person that gives a lot and you give him a lot of attention, he'll know that you are giving him more attention because he gives money. Sooner or later, he's going to realize that you're just after him because of his money. Don't you see that he'll know and pick up on that? Not here. Here, I pastor the one that gives and the one that doesn't give. I treat them all the same because the Lord never makes partiality of people. There are parents that give more attention to one son than they do the other, and some tend to do that. But now when it's about dealing with the church, they are all the same. They're all my children, and there's an inheritance. You divide it up equally. Right? The inheritance are divided equally like that. So those pastors that God places, it says they watch for our souls, not to investigate us, because there are pastors that investigate you. Listen, why didn't you come Sunday? And you should tell him, because I didn't feel like it. What's wrong with you? No, you don't investigate. You don't investigate the sheeps. Sheeps have their private lives. Sheeps have their conducts, their bad days, good days, better days. Listen, I've seen folk that have misbehaved and then they behave well. And others that behave well and then they misbehave. Listen, this is an extreme. A good father knows that his children all have different characters. He has a character like this, a character like that. So the father is supposed to study each one of them to give them the affection accordingly. You don't treat them all the same in the aspect of mistreating this one or compare him with the other because this one studied a lot, you studied less. Never compare because each one have different professions and a different measure. Say the family of faith. Look at what Colossians says as the last advice. Colossians chapter 3, verse 9. It says, do not lie to each other since you have taken off the old man with his practices and have put on the new man who is being renewed to a true knowledge to the image of the one that created him. Notice it's being renewed. It's not being created because that new man is already within you. But when he took human form, he lost his identity, his knowledge. So now he has to be renewed. It is renewing a knowledge little by little because as he goes and attends the church, the pastor that instructs him, this is a work of many years. This is not a work of a day or two. This is a work that you notice that the years go by and you notice that you begin to change because there's a lot of contaminations. Your father, your parents did a lot of damage. Your influence of religion, of the politics, the grandfather you grew with, the ambient you grew up in, that begins to destroy your mind and give you bad information. And it begins to destroy you and begin to form in you complexes. So you have to renew your mind. So as it's renewed, this is a process that some take longer. Some come more renewed than others. They come more educated than others because one parent had 2 children, the other one had 10, and he could not give them the sneakers, the shoes he wanted, or the bicycle he wanted. So that's how they're formed. So when he arrives here to the family of faith, you must strip them away from all those nonsenses they learned. They have to renew themselves until they put on the new man created according to God, not created based on the human family. So this is a process. Look at what it says. And have put on a new man who is being renewed to a true knowledge to the image of the one who created him, where there is not a Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision. Notice that we are of the uncircumcision. We are of the uncircumcision, not circumcision, but here is speaking of a plane of love, of family, of patience, where God removes the covenants from the midst. Imagine, it's speaking of the Father with his Son. Notice what it says, where there aren't Greeks nor Jews, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarians nor Scythians, slaves or free, but Christ is in all. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, goodness, bearing one another and forgiving one another. If one has grievances against another, as Christ has forgiven you, forgive others. And over all these virtues, say over all these virtues, put on love, which is the bond of perfect unity. So then, the calling is to forgive ourselves. Now, the problem is, not problems, because we all have differences, but when we are dealing with the doctrine, there Paul doesn't tolerate. Notice, let's read what it says in Romans, so you can understand when they say, why didn't he love him, or why didn't he love her? Because from here, many have left. Oh, no. They can commit from adultery to any weaknesses of the flesh. There's love here for everyone. Now, there is something you cannot tolerate. Let's look to Romans chapter 16 so you can see the apostle of love that says that the love is compassionate, love is kind and gentle and patient. Now, the apostle of love, look at what he says, that Paul is my apostle. And I have to be found on top of the foundation, not aside. They can accuse me from everything. But we have to be in the unity of the Spirit, because Paul says, all whom are perfect be of one accord. So I can't feel different from the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul is my apostle. He's not your apostle. He's my apostle. I'm your apostle. But he is mine apostle, my apostle. There's one apostle for me, the Apostle Paul. From him is whom I learned from. Look at what it says. And look, he urges you. I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause division. Paul is strong, but I have to be found on top of the foundation, not on the side. I can't love more than God. So look at what it says. I urge you, brothers, that you watch for those who cause division and obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teachings, your doctrines you have learned. Keep away from them. Be careful. Don't love more than God. Oh, no, he said he's a good man. I think the apostle is in fault here. No, I'm not in fault here. I did not slip up in this. I support until the gray hairs as my father. I am loving and peaceful. I haven't slipped. When you don't see a pastor here or someone here, it isn't for the lack of love, because what can he do to avoid us from loving him? What can a son do for you to avoid loving him? Oh, my son committed a crime. He's in prison, incarcerated for life, but it's your son. And if you're bothered, it's because it hurts you, because it is your son. If it's not your son, then it doesn't matter. That's my neighbor's son. But when it's my son, wait a minute, that's my son. He can do whatever. But now, imagine when they come against the doctrine, and the doctrine is the grace. It is our food. It is the food of the family of faith. Imagine that your son, that you come from work with your groceries, and one of the children takes the groceries and dumps them in the river. He throws them out there somewhere. You're going to say, what are you, a wolf or sheep? How can you throw out the food? Those that oppose, look at what it says. It says, I plead, brother, I urge you to watch for those that cause division and obstacles against the teachings you've learned. It says, keep away from them. Don't be smiling at them, nor take their calls. No, because listen, that you know, because suddenly your ear may drift. Yes. It says, for those who are such do not serve the Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and with soft words and flattering speech deceive the hearts of the naive, the simple. Now look, when someone leaves here, right away they start forming a little group. They open a little kiosk out there and begin to speak with those they can. Now why are they opening that kiosk? Because they love the Lord? No, because they see economic potential. And those that leave, that's what they begin to do. That's how thousands of religions became registered in Washington, D.C., that the Baptists of the North didn't like something. So one of the leaders got up and says, let's make the Baptists of the South. Then the Presbyterian Church decided to forgive so-and-so. So now we're not in accord with that. Let's open up another church out there in America. So the Baptists didn't like the way they Baptist here. So now we're going to be liberal Baptists. The Pentecostal didn't like the way they interpreted tongues, so they opened another church where they do it in a different way. Here in Miami, there are like 1,000 kiosks open out there, and all of them in disobedience continue in the same manner. Don't listen to those people, because you must protect the family of faith. No, I don't applaud anyone that leave here because of nonsense of the flesh and that because they said this, that, or the other. Stand firm, because you are a part of the family of faith and you take care of the faith. The family of faith you take care of. Let's finish with a parable, Matthew 13. It's been a while since we've read history to read parables. This is a little different because I think this is a great truth that Jesus in the days of his flesh spoke. Chapter 13. Look at what it says, verse 51. This is a long chapter. It has many verses. Jesus said to them, "Have you understood all these things?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." And he said to them, since they've already said, "Yes, Lord," he says to them, "Therefore, every scribe who is instructed," intelligent, right, "to the kingdom of heaven, it's like a man," that is a householder who brings forth out of his treasure things that are new and old. Well, a father of the household knows that there is a new covenant and old covenant. So he knows that you cannot take from the old and bring it to the new because you break up the family. So what do? Everything in the treasure, I say, listen, this is of Moses, this is of Peter, this is of John, this is of James. My duty is, since I am a scholar and not a corrupt man in my mind or ignorant, every scribe that's a scholar knows there are two covenants, and that one is a covenant of death that's no good. That is the one the churches are preaching out there, putting in Moses, the law, a mixture of doctrine. Since I am a scholar, I see the treasure. The treasure says, be careful. Jose Luis, this is the treasure. But this book is a curse. Be careful with this book, because in this book, there are bad things and good things. There are two covenants. And if you get confused because it says it is a sacred book of God, sacred, this sacred? This what? This is death in the pot. This book is the worst book. That's why Hitler, not understanding that, burnt a lot of Bibles. But I wasn't there to tell him not to destroy the life in the book. Here, there are new things and old things. I keep the new ones because the new ones is the fruit of the family of faith. Amen? Blessed with every spiritual blessing.